You might remember that time when Sophie scared the shit out of Meghan with just one look. But I'm going to refresh your memory because there's so much more that was said with their body language. Welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and it would be great if you join us by just liking this video, subscribing, and hitting that bell. Let's get down to it. It was Commonwealth Day 2020 and the very last engagement of Harry and Meghan as royals. I've mentioned this day a couple times in other videos, such as the way there was basically no interaction between Catherine and Meghan. But to really appreciate each and every single body language interaction, we have to dig deeper to understand their meanings and implications. That's how you can apply these observations in your daily life. And this moment is especially interesting. We can see Harry, Meghan, Edward, and Sophie sitting on the second row, and William and Catherine sitting on the front row. Charles and Camilla had not arrived yet. By the way, there's an interesting body language clue in the way William looks at Catherine that I've mentioned a couple times before. The emotion is obviously attraction, but what is the gesture that gives it away? The answer in a couple minutes. I want you to focus on this specific reaction. Edward was talking to Meghan, Harry was also involved in the conversation, but you cannot help but see that Sophie is, well, less than impressed with the exchange. She's not buying it. Now, we can suppose that by this point there had been enough frictions inside the royal family regarding the Harkles, that it was a bit difficult for Sophie to show empathy towards her. Now, you might be wondering why so much difference between her attitude and Edward's. But it's really common that inside a couple, the two have different ways of expressing and filtering emotions. Maybe Edward was just trying to be polite at that moment, and the most relevant body language signal that we can spot in Sophie is a straight and stiff neck, besides looking away, of course. Sometimes you might be feeling emotions that are so strong that you don't even want to bother trying to disguise them because you know that it will come out as fake. This depends on how strong is the underlying emotion and your ability to adjust depending on the moment. Well, I'm sure that Sophie knew that there were cameras everywhere, so her underlying emotions must have been really strong to have this attitude in public. And well, Catherine was not willing to interact much with Nutmeg either. But notice what happens when Sophie finally turns around and establishes eye contact with Meghan. She looks at her and doesn't blink until Meghan evades her gaze, looking down and dissolving her own smile. The first and most important fact about this reaction is that Meghan knew that Sophie did not like her at all, and that's why she focused on chatting with Edward. If there had been any kind of empathy or willingness to interact, Meghan would have acknowledged Sophie's gaze in any way. Maybe keeping her smile for a couple more seconds, or nodding, or scrunching her nose. All of those are valid ways to connect when someone establishes eye contact with you. But that doesn't happen here. Meghan looks away instantly. She was not expecting Sophie to turn around at that moment. And I mentioned in a previous video how strong can eye contact be in any situation. We still don't know how it works, but even with a perfectly still facial expression, we can usually have a good guess at what is the emotion that eyes are trying to convey. And eye contact being so powerful is the reason why all those moments when Meghan is staring at the camera are so unsettling. It's something that just draws you in. So I'm absolutely sure that whatever inner emotion was Sophie feeling at that moment, Meghan got it in a split second. Both Sophie and Meghan's attitude, analyzed step by step, is the way that we can confirm that they were not in best terms at that moment. Yes, you most probably felt that upon seeing this video for the first time, but it's important to dissect this kind of events so you can replicate them in daily observations. Of course, it will never be the same to be able to watch facial emotions on a screen, being able to zoom in or use slow motion than to see them in real time during a conversation. In real life, you have just one shot to spot this kind of interaction, so your best bet is practicing it here. That's why I suggested that you take a good look at William looking at Catherine. And I'm sure that you spotted that single body language clue that tells you that someone likes another person, or that someone likes you. You can see when William turns his eyes to Catherine's mouth. And I've mentioned how William does it almost all the time, so it's not a fake gesture. He really fancies looking at his wife. But back to Meghan and Sophie, you know that you can't possibly jump to conclusions with any single body language clue. You either have to spot it repeating a second or third time, or look for other different clues that complement your first observations. And there is no better way to confirm that things between the Sussex and Wessex houses were not in good standing than the moment they are leaving the Abbey. William and Catherine have already stood up and walking away, and then Meghan, instead of waiting for Sophie and Edward to walk out, she goes through the front row and immediately catches up with the Cambridges. Well, the chair skipping is odd enough, and I don't think that this is something one should be doing in this kind of events. I'm sure you know more than me about royal protocol, so I'd be glad to read your comments about this. But it's not only that Meghan jumped over the chairs. I guess they had to come out of the Abbey with a specific order. And it shouldn't be surprising that the Sussexes should come right after the Cambridges. So it's not like Meghan was jumping the chairs because she was afraid that Sophie and Edward were going to cut in line. That was not going to happen. So the only reason left for this is that Meghan simply didn't want to get anywhere near Sophie. That's a common attitude when you don't like someone or are afraid of someone. You will make sure to not get near them by any means. And speaking of being afraid, I have a second riddle for you. Why did Harry have such an angry face when they were walking out the Abbey? Well, I see an angry face. I don't know about you, but it will be interesting to know what you think. Yes, this event has a lot of interactions between the members of the royal family, and it will be great to spend a full hour analyzing them all. But when it comes to body language and learning to identify these clues, it's much better if we take them one at a time. There's also the fact that we have some background of what was the status of the relationship by this moment. But let's do something. You could show this video of Meghan's reaction to Sophie's eye contact to someone that is not aware or doesn't care at all about royal family drama. I'm sure that even with no background or information about who are these two, they will reach to the same conclusion. That this woman in green not only couldn't stand the woman in white's gaze, but she even looked afraid. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that Meghan was afraid because she thought that she could be harmed in any way. Because there's another way of being afraid, and it's when you have to meet people, look them in the eyes, and face the consequences of your own actions in person. And speaking of that, I'm sure that Meghan and Catherine are going to meet again sooner or later. And it will be really interesting to see both of their reactions face to face, and even if I'm sure that they will do their best to conceal their emotions, there is no way Who Made Me Cry Gate is not gonna affect their behavior in some way. And we'll be there with fresh popcorn. If you want to refine your observation skills, all you have to do is download my 100 body language tips right in the description of this video. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas, and it will always be a pleasure, my body language buddies. Much love and bliss.